Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day life. Let's start with the video.
I met my husband right after a bad breakup. My friends had forced me to go out to a party with them just to lighten up my mood. I wouldn't budge, but then finally they had their way because I thought it would be nice to stop feeling as horrible as I did. I was sitting at the corner of a bar, sipping a mojito, when he first approached me. I thought he was attractive, but that annoyed me even more. I couldn't stand seeing a man at that moment. It hurt me too much because it reminded me of my ex and what he did to me. That's a story for another time. Maybe I'll tell them one day. Anyways, after 3 months, I traveled to Atlanta for a work trip and we met again. At this time, my wounded heart was beginning to heal, so I was open to entertain a conversation with him. We had a lovely time. He was handsome, smart, and attentive. I was attracted to the way his mind worked. It pulled me in and we decided to meet up later that evening. You can tell that things went well because I ended up getting married to him, and right now we have 3 beautiful kids. First a girl, then 2 sweet boys. I love him, but I wonder if my love for him is enough. He had always been a mama's boy. At the time, it seemed cute because I thought if he was this attentive and caring towards his mom, he would treat me right. My mother-in-law, however, never ceased to express her disapproval of our relationship. He was her only son, and it seemed that she would prefer if he remained single forever. She would call at odd times in the night, saying she wanted to check up on him because she missed him. This happened time and time again, but he didn't see anything wrong with it. I thought the more often it happened, it would dawn on him that it was getting a lot. Instead, he thought I was being insensitive to the needs of his mother. On one particular occasion, we had planned a family outing, just us and the kids, and all of a sudden she called saying she wasn't feeling too good and was having migraines because he didn't visit her like he normally did that weekend. It was annoying to me because she knew why he could make it, and every time we had to do something as a family, she came up with something to change the plans. My sister-in-laws know that she doesn't like me because, in her words, I took her only son away from her. I was tired of coping with her manipulation, so I finally confronted her about it. She acted so oblivious to what I was saying, and only God knows what she told my husband, because he came home so angry and made so many threats and mentioned that he was tired of my constant nagging about his mother being in our lives. He said the most hurtful things to me and almost hit me. It was then I realized that I was married to him and his mother, and there was nothing I could do about it. Our relationship took a downward turn from then on. He didn't seem interested in the kids and I anymore. We were always arguing about the littlest of things, and it drove me crazy. His sister recently got engaged, so his mom invited everyone for dinner at her house. I thought it would be the perfect time to come together and make amends. I was ready to apologize to my mother-in-law if that was what it was going to take to save my marriage. I didn't mind forgoing my pride for my home. The thought of losing him was worse than having to cope with my mother-in-law. On the morning of the engagement dinner, we had decided we would meet at his mom's house after work since our workplaces were on opposite ends of the city. It was a good thing the kids were staying at my mom's for the weekend. I didn't want them to see or hear anything because I knew it was going to be a very eventful weekend. I got to the house at 6:30 p.m. for dinner at 7 because I didn't want to draw any more attention to myself than necessary by being late. That would give my mother-in-law more things to talk about. We were seated at the dinner table, but I didn't see my husband. At first, I thought he was running late, but I had this uneasy feeling. People were conversing and having a good time. I, on the other hand, felt a pit in my stomach. It was as if I knew something unpleasant was coming. I tried to shake it off with small talk, but it didn't work. Minutes into dinner, my mother-in-law picked up a glass and hit it gently with cutlery to get everyone's attention. The room became silent. I was almost sure everyone could hear my heart racing. Something had to be up because my husband was never late. He was one of the most principled people I knew. She thanked everyone for coming and then mentioned that she had something very important to say and thought that this was the best time because we were all gathered together. She brought out a letter that was surprisingly addressed to me. The first line read, "I'm sorry I left." The sudden realization and horror drained all the blood out of me as I pieced some recent occurrences together. I became pale as I remembered how my husband started so secretively, was always on the phone, and was startled every time I came in. My mother-in-law read the letter with a sly grin on her face. He said he was fed up with all the fights and arguments. We grew apart because he couldn't stay with someone who didn't love his mother like he did. He said it was his fault for not realizing on time and saving me the stress, and that he'd hoped I would change and be the wife his mother wanted for him, but I never did, so he had no choice than to leave. It was as though the world stopped around me. I felt a mixture of emotions: rage, fear, disappointment, betrayal, embarrassment, regret. I couldn't believe my ears. The last 5 years flashed through my mind, how the happy memories began to trickle down as the years went by. I was finding it hard to breathe, but I also couldn't bear to hear anything else from the letter. Staggering, I stood up, not feeling my feet, as I ran as fast as I could away from everyone. I wanted to be alone and cry myself to sleep, so I went home and did just that. I received several calls from family, especially from my sisters-in-law. But I just wanted to be left alone. It was a relief that the kids were with their grandma for the weekend, so they don't have to see me like this. I was so annoyed at the fact that he would pick a day as important as his sister's engagement party to pull this stunt, and his mother would enable him. Well, I guess she didn't care because she finally got what she wanted. Something that was so beautiful, my marriage has now gone down the drain. Update 1. It's been 3 months since he left, and it still hurts like it was yesterday, though I'm coping better now. I heard from his sister that he moved to his mother's house in the Hamptons. All his siblings are upset with their mom. They think she ruined their brother's marriage, all for her so-called love for him. She doesn't think she did anything wrong, and in fact, it's the happiest I have seen her since I got married to her son. Her children tried to apologize on her behalf, saying she was always overly protective of him, but it got worse after their father died when they were much younger. They had thought it was normal, but now realize that it probably isn't. My kids, on the other hand, keep asking where Daddy is, and I can't bring myself to say anything to them except that he traveled and would be back soon. How can I explain to them that their father left us because of his mother? Update 2. Life is more bearable now, and I'm slowly getting my life back. I joined a volunteer network to teach indigent kids on Saturdays, and it's exciting. I also met a guy, and he has been really good with the kids, but I'm not ready yet. It feels like I'm cheating on my husband. I just want this phase to be over as soon as possible. I decided to get a divorce, so one of my friends recommended a lawyer. I got an appointment with her and started the process of getting the divorce. I still can't believe that all of this is happening, but it is what it is. He got served with the papers last week. The weirdest and most annoying thing happened. He keeps stalling and won't sign it. I felt a glimmer of hope, but I'm still too hurt. I tell myself that him not wanting to sign the divorce papers doesn't mean he regrets his actions and wants to make amends. Even if he wishes to come back together, I fear that our relationship is too damaged. Where do we start to patch things up? I don't recognize the man who tried to speak to me at my friend's party years ago, or the one who successfully wooed me after we met the second time. I'm still in love with him, though. That I am sure of. But I'm not certain what the future holds for us. Plus, his mother is still very well in the picture. Girl, he being so attentive to his mother, though cute, was a major red flag that you should have taken care of at the beginning. Anyways, there is no use crying over spilt milk right now. Your husband needs to decide what exactly he wants because he can't leave you hanging. If he doesn't want you, he needs to sign those papers ASAP. That's some major emotional abuse. He should just get married to his mother since she wouldn't let anyone else have him. I hope she realizes that she destroyed her child's marriage, and when he comes back to his senses, if he is smart enough to do so, he would hate her. Do what you need to do to stay sane and care for your children. That's all that matters right now. Loads of love for you. I am also excited for the new guy, XOXO. Next story. I live in an apartment, and 3 months ago, a new family moved into the apartment above me. They have a child that looks to be about 2 years old. The first weekend that they moved in, the woman came to my door, and I'm assuming a few other people's doors as well, and introduced herself and her toddler. She also gave me a goodie bag of candies, which I thought was odd but kind. She explained that her toddler has a hard time adjusting to change, and him getting used to his new room could cause some crying, and also mentioned he's quite clingy and will cry if she sets him down. She gave me her WhatsApp to contact her if he's being too loud. I thought this was considerate and thanked her. I heard some crying the first couple weeks and didn't mention it because of the adjustment period. But after a month, it was still happening. Her kid doesn't really cry at night anymore, but during the day I can hear his tantrums, and I work from home, so it is bothersome. I ended up sending her messages that the crying was disturbing me on 4 different occasions, and each time she took him out for a couple hours, but then returned and he would end up throwing more tantrums. I then made a complaint to the apartment manager and was told that they could only bring it to their attention that there was a complaint, but they couldn't evict based on a child throwing tantrums during the day. In my opinion, it seems that a parent should be able to have these tantrums under better control, so it doesn't make sense for this to be happening 3 to 4 times a day. I started to wonder if she neglected him during the day, so I made a report to DCS, CPS, and another to the sheriff's office. Officers responded the same day and looked like they left somewhat quickly after arriving for 5 minutes. Then, about a week and a half later, I guess a social worker had come by because the kid's mom came to my door and asked if I reported her. I told her I did and explained why, and she was angry and told me I have no clue what it's like having a toddler and that my actions were low and malicious. My boyfriend was over at the time and overheard me. He said he couldn't believe I would put her through that, called me heartless, then left. He then texted me later that night and broke up with me, saying he wanted nothing to do with someone who would try getting someone's child taken away over noise. I don't think he's understanding that it's 3 to 4 tantrums a day. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole by far. My kids are on this spectrum, and guess what? It has put me on the receiving end of this. It's awful trying to explain to cops that the hour-long tantrum is over not going to the playground in 3 feet of snow, and 3 to 4 a day is nothing. That's normal as a toddler. Or because we left the mall after being there for 2 hours. He, at that age, refused to go into any stores and just wanted to walk around. Edit. I'll also add if the kid is on the spectrum, there's not much she can do to get help. Getting a diagnosis or even a referral that young is extremely difficult unless you have an amazing pediatrician. It took until my kid was almost 5 to prove to the doctors, for lack of a better term, something was wrong. Holy shiz, you're the a-hole. The only evidence you had was the baby crying. That's quite literally not evidence at all, since babies, cry. This is incomprehensible to me. You were annoyed at crying, so you filed a CPS report for neglect? Please tell me that doesn't really sound reasonable to you. Next story. For some background, I, 35F, and my husband, 38M, have 2 kids, a daughter, 13F, and a son, 9M. A few years ago, we had to move across the country because my husband got a new job that paid a lot more than his last job. It didn't really affect me because I run an online business, but it affected our kids a lot because they had to leave all of their friends, which is why we got them both phones. Our son was young and didn't understand or care as much, so we just got him a cheap phone from the grocery store, but we got our daughter a newer iPhone. As our son has gotten older, he has started to understand technology a lot more now and has started a small gaming circle with some of his friends, so we got him a laptop. Daughter already had a school one, so she didn't want a new one. But our son started saying how he wanted a phone like hers, or better, because he needed it for his gaming. I said if he wanted a new one, he would need to start saving, because his sister was also already saving for a new phone. He said he understood, but he wanted some money to help him start off. I thought that was fair and gave him some money. After that, he didn't really bother us about it much. A few months later, he started to ask about a new phone again because his sister was only about $40 away from being able to get a new phone, so we just gave her the money because we gave him the money to start off for saving, but we didn't for her. Our son was not happy with this and said it wasn't fair, and he got really upset. We thought he had calmed down, so my husband and I just continued with what we were doing, and so did our daughter. But when she came out of her room and started to walk to the kitchen, he grabbed the phone from her hand and threw it down the hall, leaving a big green line that takes up almost half of the screen. Our daughter almost cried, and we grounded our son and made him give her the money that we gave him to start his saving. My daughter started to use her old phone again but asked if we could get her a new phone because he broke it and not her. Side note, just before we gave them their first phone, we said that that was the only phone we would buy them, and if they wanted a new one, they would have to buy it themselves. I said I wouldn't buy her a new phone because it's not my fault it broke. She said that it wasn't fair because she didn't break it, and she wouldn't have to save up for a new one when she was taking good care of her phone and he destroyed it. I got mad, but I said no. I wouldn't be buying her a new phone. Later that night, my husband pulled me aside and said he thinks we should go halves with her brother to buy her a new phone because she is really upset and her old phone that she has to use now is really slow. I still said no because it wasn't our fault. A few days have passed and I've seen her get annoyed at the phone, but she won't say anything because she doesn't want to be annoying. I'm starting to feel bad, so I just wanted another opinion. Am I the a-hole? Edit, please stop attacking me in my DMs. This story was submitted to me and they asked me to post it. You're the a-hole. Your son broke the phone. His phone line gets turned off until he replaces your daughter's phone. Once that is done, he can use her damaged phone until he saves up enough money to buy his own phone. It is on your son to make this right and learn a tough lesson along the way. Kids have to learn consequences. Otherwise, we're just raising entitled a-holes that we'll have to provide advice to in the future on this sub. Also, not to be an a-hole myself, but take a look at the difference between there, and there. You're the a-hole. Your 13-year-old is a little angel. She saved up all her own money, didn't complain when you unfairly gave the 9-year-old money, saved up everything she had, didn't bat an eyelid when you bought a 9-year-old laptop good enough to game on, which are cheap, and continued to use a school one which won't be half as decent. Bet she was super grateful when you gave her the last £4, and now she hasn't even complained that she's having to use an old, outdated phone because you're picking her brother and his behavior over her? How are you not the a-hole? You're rewarding and punishing the wrong children, and you're being so unfair to your 13-year-old. Not to mention you raised an entitled 9-year-old. So yes, absolutely your and your husband's fault. Give your 13-year-old a new phone and apologize that you came across with a huge case of favoritism.